made them choose Jesus? And that also brings to
They
mind.
didn't at first, because he was never referred to as Jesus in his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the writing about him occurred 80 years after his death, and that he began to run as Jesus the Christ. The very word Christ is not of African origin. It's from Krishna. It's more of East Indian origin than Africa.
Well, Rogers tells us that the word means the black one, the anointed one, because
It could well
one kissed of the sun was worthy of being the most anointed.
It could well mean that.
Now, this Jesus, whom we know from the study of history, was a black man.
Whose picture we know.
Oh, yes, sure, I think it's the proper word.
Now, let's make a distinction between the physical Jesus and the picture that the Pope commissioned Michelangelo to paint in the 15th century. Now, at the Conference of Nicaea, where they lost the books of the Bible that they didn't want to deal with, by putting them on the table and said that in the morning, the books that God don't want us to use will be gone. And so there were no lost books of the Bible. They were the books that was left out of the Bible, especially the book of Mary. It tells you what Joseph said when he discovered Mary was with child. He knew it wasn't his child. Otherwise, they could not create the Immaculate Conception had they left the book of Mary in there. Now, the idea of Immaculate Conception is old, because in Africa, a woman can have 9 children if her reputation is good and honorable, and if she's frequented only by one man, the African will say that her skirt is clean, her mouth is sweet. She is virgin. So the idea of virginity has absolutely nothing to do with whether you have had a child by process of cohabitation or not. Because the Europeans now wanted to create something that had a similar purity. They now would give a lady a child without having intercourse with a man.
Well, this also have something to do with the fact that most of them were misogynists. They didn't want, but they couldn't get around exalting a woman to a higher state in the Christian church, because most people at the time that they were trying to convert to the religion was into the mother goddess concept. And in order to elevate Mary to that status, they had to take her out of the realm of humanity, so to speak.
They had to make a supernatural Mary. And I think it's unfair to her, because they had to dehumanize her by elevating her above human.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary, not Christ, should be at the heart, the focal point of the Christian religion.
Well, as ironic as it is, the Catholics in some way have done that.
They have done that in some of their rituals, but they have steadily fought against even having a minor female administrator in the church.
Now, this person who eventually came to be called Jesus by them,
the picture that we get, it wasn't painted until the 15th century.
What was he actually like? What was happening in the Hebrew? He was a Hebrew, we know that. And what was happening with the Hebrews? What was the dynamic going on between them and the Roman government at that time, who were occupying their land in that little nation of Judea?
Well, the Romans occupying their land until they got on the Romans' nerves, and the Romans destroyed the last temple at 7th AD.
Well, they say it was a hotbed there, especially where Jesus was raised, around Nazareth in Galilee, was a hotbed of rebellion. They were constantly carrying out some type of revolt.
But they're still doing it. We're talking about people of the Hebrew faith as distinguished between people we call Jews. The word Jew had its greatest development in Europe. There are people of the Hebrew faith all over the world, in India and China and South Sea Islands, who never used the word Jew, who still belong to the Hebrew faith, and whose conversion to the Hebrew faith is older than that of Europe. The Europeans, Hebrews, were converted in the 8th century, 850 or thereabout.
Well, they felt that the Romans really had no right to rule over them, not only because they were invaders, but their laws said, their Torah said that only God ruled them. Only the Creator was their ruler, and ruled through their king that came out from their midst.
But the Romans were no respecter of local customs or local laws. And even with the trial of Jesus Christ and for sorcery, the Romans did not want a part of it, but because the Roman law, the crime of sorcery was major and therefore had to be taken to the Roman government. Minor crimes, they could try themselves. And so when they took him before the Roman emperor, the Roman emperor realized that he was no enemy of Rome, and he wasn't telling Romans to give their money to the poor or turn the other cheek. He wasn't driving Romans from the temple. He was driving his own people. So the Romans had no vested interest in interfering with all of this internal matter between the people they had colonized. And so he pushed them back to the crowd and said, he's your king. And they pushed him back toward the Romans and said, not my king. So we see the essential beauty and loneliness of the story. And the man who eventually emerged as Jesus Christ was one of a number of itinerant ministers roaming through the land at that time and who had the smallest amount of followers. Why did he survive? The others got lost. His people were then what they are now, great record keepers.
And evangelizers.
And they are also, when necessary, great record changers. And maybe some of the greatest liars under the eye of God.